Good morning, everybody.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Well, it's a little early over here, but glad to be here.
Yeah. Thanks. Then the stage is yours. You can begin.
Thank you very much. So I think the question, of course, is the evolution of sports, and let's call it sort of exercise and athleticism during the pandemic as a result of the usage of VR and the capability. And I think what is very interesting about this is that you find that there's sort of like three classifications of the types of experiences that have been put together. The first, and probably the one that everyone in the kind of VR XR community is most familiar with, would be sort of the music and rhythm kind of type of things. So these would be the Beat Saber, Supernaturals, things of those nature, in which certainly people are, it's a gamified experience in the sense that as you are able to hit items or move your arms or do things correctly, you're getting more points. But the main item is that there's a music soundtrack that is providing kind of like a background to provide synchronization and increase activity. The second area, which is a little bit less, but also quite a bit interesting, is let's call it the cartoonification of exercise. And this is one in which there is a game world, a game situation in which rapid activities and high activities are certainly being rewarded by a point system. It's not necessarily music driven, even though there often is a soundtrack. And then finally, the last area would be kind of realistic simulations in which the virtual reality environment is trying to simulate something that's a real world situation, and that's providing that back to you. If we use just boxing, so straight up boxing as a example of that, what we see with this is that you have things like Supernatural and Box VR as the music-driven exercise capability. So it's all 1, 2, 1, 2. Then you have, for example, for the cartoonification, a game like Creed, in which it's a case of boxing, and you're trying to do things, but it's not trying to be hyper realistic. It's not driven by a music soundtrack. And then finally, on the kind of like simulation side of things, you find Thrill of the Fight, which is meant to be sort of a realistic boxing simulator. And the part that's very interesting about these things, of course, is that if you look at like the VR Sports Institute's calorie counters for these things, they are at different levels in which the simulations themselves in general tend to be one class above the others in terms of calories per minute that they're expended. And if we then see this kind of basic concept, right? So music driven, cartoonified, and realistic simulation, we see that it kind of is starting to propagate through multiple experience capabilities. You can see this with tennis. You can see this with ping pong. You can see this with all sorts of a variety of things. And then what has been layering into this, coming in from a different area as well as bolting on top, is the addition of peripherals. And these can be something as light as wearing, let's say, just a weighted vest, wearing a weighted vest, or to kind of increase the resistance level, or to have some gloves and that sort of thing, to specific VR type peripherals, whether those are haptic vests, or in the case of, let's say, the kind of regular gymnasium peripherals first. So things, one that people are most familiar with probably would be getting onto a rowing machine while wearing a VR headset. Thus, the world changes while you're still doing the exact same exercise you would inside of the gymnasium. And then the last one would be sort of VR specific for peripherals, which could be things such as haptic vests or things like Black Box Gymnasium, which has built a complete machinery system in which VR is the visual input, but the rest of it is kind of a traditional weight and resistance machine and pulling these things together. The part about this that is interesting is this constant evolution in these areas, that this is probably one of the stickiest, if you will, game or application areas for VR for use at home, in which people are finding like very high persistent usage levels. And actually the number of kind of case studies that we're seeing of kind of personal transformation and benefit that are coming from these are really quite high. In fact, in my own personal case, let's see, starting last summer, I've lost about 10 kilos doing this. My workout routine is very simple. I have a 10 kilo weighted vest that I put on. I do about 10 minutes of Beat Saber to wake up. I then do about 10 minutes of pistol whip, which, by the way, pistol whip's a heck of a workout. And then for the last piece of it, I do about 10 to 15 minutes of the thrill of the fight, which, if you have never done this boxing simulator, I can tell you it's the longest 3 minutes of your entire life doing one of these boxing rounds. And I found that it's been very easy for me to actually integrate this into my daily exercise activity routines. For one of the main reasons is that it's actually a heck of a lot more fun and entertaining than things that I had done before. And the economic impact is very real. In my particular case, I canceled a roughly $150 per month gymnasium membership because I had no need for it. Additionally, there was no need to drive and take additional time out, and it's much more efficient for me. And I have found that in my discussions with a lot of people across a lot of demographic areas, I've let them try it. They went out and purchased their own, and it's actually probably the most compelling entry wedge for virtual reality for, let's say, non-VR specific and let's say, video game natives. Is this kind of like gamified dancing, entertainment, exercise type of thing. And as such, what we really see is that this is going to continue to be a growing area. And that we're probably going to see a propagation further of subscription models that people are attempting to kind of like bring into it, as well as the downloadable content, the ability to purchase additional items. It will be in some ways a replication of kind of like what's called the standalone small gym phenomena, which, at least in the United States, you see lots of yoga studios, bar studios, crunch fit studios, Orange Theory, those types of things, where in a physical space, they have some dedicated equipment, capabilities, and kind of like cultural structures. There's a subscription model to being a member, and then of course there's add-ons and bolt-ons and things like that. And we're seeing this very much propagate inside of the virtual reality health and fitness area. On the one hand, of course, nobody likes to think that they're kind of being pushed into paying more money for things that it could have just been a one flat fee. But on the other hand, you find that the stickiness level of these things, if the company is able to continue to provide value, is actually quite high, and that the user satisfaction with these things is really quite high, and people are able to persist with them, get benefit out of them, as I personally have, and it's really quite entertaining. So I think we see the sports and health and fitness element of VR being perhaps one of the if not but perhaps one of the primary drivers for non-gamers to get into VR and XR. And I think that you'll see this also reflected in the hardware trends. Yes, I think all of us have seen sort of like maybe from like 2 shows ago, the Panasonic goggles that look like steampunk goggles, but they're very, very light. Yes, they are like all the processing is offloaded, but that actually makes it a perfect sort of health and fitness VR headset from the simple reason that it just reduces the amount of weight and front heaviness on the headsets. And I think that this is going to be kind of a trend where you'll actually see even specialized health and fitness VR goggles coming into the marketplace at some point in time. I think with that, that's just kind of like the summary thoughts that we have about where the market and the industry is going, and would love to, if there's time for questions, happy to take one or hand my time back, because I know events always run long.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, if we have one question, you say, just a remark. It's a session about fitness and sport, and we continuously speak about game. In fact, it's a new part of the gaming industry.
Well, actually, I think they are the same, right? I mean, why everyone plays sports usually when they're young, and then they stop when they're old and pay money to watch somebody else do it. I think it's just really, it's a natural human activity that is just propagated into a new environment. And I think the part that is kind of like very new and exciting, of course, is that what we consider to be video games is traditionally a sitting in a chair with a controller type activity for the last decade or two. And I think it's very exciting that where perhaps things like the Wii Fit finally got people standing up and moving around, this absolutely requires the movement element of it to entertain and participate. So I don't think it's really so much that much of a new revolution of things as it's really kind of a propagation of a natural human activity into a platform that can support it.
And just another remark, you talked about gymnasium and fitness room and the evolution of the economic model for these places. Do you have seen a kind of transformation, maybe fitness room, which use VR or XR technology?
Yes. So what you see is kind of like maybe two. Let's say there's the commercial side of things. So there is a company called Black Box VR, which is dedicated to creating gymnasiums in which it's location gymnasiums in which the VR-based module. It's about 3 meters tall, weighs several hundred kilograms, has weights and pulleys, and it's built with the VR headsets. And it's they expect customers to come there, so it's kind of like location-based sports entertainment. And also we're seeing that many of the traditional kind of location-based gymnasiums are starting to add a virtual reality component. In fact, my local gymnasium here, for the rowing machines, they will give you Oculus Go's to do kind of like one of the rowing games or one of the rowing simulators, for the simple reason that rowing is just boring, right? And so it gives you something to do. And that's kind of where they're adding that into it. But then the split side is obviously for the home activity level. Spending big money for home exercise equipment, whether it's Pelotons or rowing machines or treadmills, and the ability to add a virtual reality component to it, and one drives the other, is also a thing that we're seeing quite a bit of a trend on. And I think you will see further integration, that the companies that sell home exercise equipment will be offering, kind of a virtual reality bolt-on component, either already, which some of them do, or certainly as a part of the overall purchase capability. But again, always looking for that subscription revenue, because they've been able to tell everybody, hey, if we have to keep sending you updates, then we would like to get paid for them.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any question for Sean? It's okay for you? Okay. Thank you, Richard.